What's good, current ancestors, in which we actually are? On this one, I want to talk about taxation. We now simply call this taxes because what was once thought to be a monetary contribution has become a multiple levied system over time. But listen, the most mysterious part about all this is that, of course, taxes didn't just start yesterday, but sometimes, we treat taxes like they ain't always been here. Part of me doesn't believe that taxes were ever not paid. They even paid taxes in myths, and some myths are older than the human species according to the way our ancestors would tell it. Before they had coin, that ching ching, what do you think they did? They gave up valuables, and the valuable didn't have to be a living thing. Whatever was valuable and you took a loss to give up was sufficient enough. Labor was considered a tax at one point. So if you don't have nothing, I know what you do have. Time, baby. Time. So go ahead and run that for me. Give me all that. Give me the watch too, because you know what? You don't need that no more. Then after you get done doing this labor, you'll get off. You'll get a nice old appreciated after this hard day of work. No pay, nothing. None of that. So let's move on. Then you had tribute, which is not necessarily defined as a tax, but you know what I'm getting at. Tribute was more like when a nation that got conquered by another nation, or might I say owed another nation, and they had to give up some valuables, to stay under the protection of that other nation or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, of course, that tribute often came from the people, and so on. Whether spiritual or political, a piece of me thinks it was always a tax. That's just what I think. You know what I'm saying? Everybody entitled to their own opinion, or whatever, based off evidence, however that you figured out you're entitled to what you think. But I think this is why religion and politics always seem to have been two peas in the pod from the jump. See, tax ain't even that bad in my opinion. What makes it bad is how it's manipulated, of course, by people who say they're doing one thing and have motives for another. So check this out. I don't know if this how it happened. I'm imagining, so imagine with me. Hold on, I'm finna go hard. Before hierarchies and social structures, tax was cool. I mean, everybody got fed, everybody worked together, and everybody got somewhat the same respect, If tax happened naturally among us, I can't imagine the pioneers of it starting it off crooked. Most things that happen naturally start off the right way, but at some point, somebody must have got a little twisted in the mix, Somebody sought out an opportunity for more, I guess. When I think about how and why that person would have sought out an opportunity for more, I can only think, well, somebody had to be collecting the tax and equally distributing it, right? If not multiple people, then it was at least one collector for the village at that point, right? Small community or whatever it may be. It was at least one collector. The collectors started taking a little bit extra for themselves, and before the people realized, the collectors basically had hired some other villagers by giving them a little bit extra too. And that eventually led to the villagers realizing that they're not getting as much as they used to get from the contributions. Sooner or later, it was like, hey man, this ain't enough to feed my family. What happened to the regular amount of contributions we usually receive? Then the collector, they probably had a head collector now at this point, you know what I'm saying? And some of the toughest guys and girls in the village to protect them from the danger, because they let them in on the cut too. And when the villagers asked why they had been receiving less of the contributions, they got lied to. But the kicker is the villagers knew they were being swindled, because obviously they were all, of somewhat the same status at one point, and for some reason now they're treating these collectors like they own the contributions that they are the ones willingly giving. The quick reasons I can think of why the villagers let this ride I guess because for one, they let this happen by allowing these collectors to distribute the rations instead of doing it themselves. Because they were probably like just assigning roles for the village, you know. We ain't thinking no harm in this. Second, they probably got threatened or harmed by the collectors. Protection, bodyguards, whatever you want to call it, if they spoke out or knew something they shouldn't. Also, they had to work harder at that point to actually have enough. If we gonna get these contributions and he taking all of it and giving us a little bit back, that mean we gotta work harder, of course. You know what I'm saying? So I ain't really got too much time to pay attention when everybody in my ear talking about they hungry, and you know how that go. Whatever. But you can even say that the collectors started giving more to the people they liked or benefited from also. So those people, the villagers, you know what I'm saying, they got swindled and then they got manipulated, and then of course if you give more to somebody else, they come in on the team and they like, yeah, if you just keep on feeding me, you know, I ain't got no problem with it, whatever, forget everybody else. But I think that could have eventually led to parents teaching their children that this is the way that life is supposed to be for their own protection. But deep down, everyone always knew better. And this started to result in like crime, which brought on the need for social, political, and economic laws. I think it put a hard, versatile understanding on the notion of when something is right and when something is wrong for most people, because they now were under control, and not for their own good, but for another's personal gain. Power doesn't begin when people contribute. You know what I'm saying? Power begins when someone else controls the distribution of everyone else's contributions. Stewardship is when something is entrusted into someone's care. But somehow stewardship became ownership on the walk, on the journey that it's been taken. And to manage now means being in control of people. But the true meaning of manage is to meet a goal despite difficulties. If you control the resources, you control the household, the city, the state, and in all, you control the people. See, money is just a form of taxation for real. And that is the one that distracts you from the others because you can't see them. You can pay with labor, time, livestock, military service, grain, and even loyalty or obedience. And it doesn't have to be to a system. You can pay any of those things to a stranger on the street right now. But anyway, look, the moment one person is trusted to manage what belongs to everyone, the possibility of corruption is born, right? And I don't think it was one evil decision. I think it was millions of small decisions repeated over generations until memory was gone of there ever even being another way. Think about it. Whatever you possess that is valuable, they have to have a piece. And you know who I'm talking about when I say they. And I'm not talking about a little thin slice like your mama asked for. They want almost most of it. Yep, bruh. You ever been ready to have some dessert? It was a holiday or something, and everybody over, and you go back and you look for that dessert, and it's all gone, or it's just a little bitty slice left, and you like, dang, I barely even got some, and everybody dipped in. And guess what? It wasn't everybody. It was that one person who kept on going back. You knew it was too, but you ain't say nothing. You know, it was just like, okay, I know who ate this. That's cool. I'm pretty sure I was that person before. It's like they managing you like a baby. Like, that's enough for now. You'll get something later. You know what I'm saying? But you possess a lot of valuable things beyond your money, because of course, you know, the money is important, but without your faith, your labor, your time, your voluntary service, your support, and so on, what's even the point of money? You don't just pay taxes. There's a whole taxation system placed upon you specifically for you. Am I lying? No, I'm not. If you change it, it'll change too. Then if you don't pay, you go to jail. Like, come on now, be for real. That look crazy, bro. Close your eyes and just imagine you are in a village back when everything was good. Then things started to change. The village bullies started terrorizing people for their goods and demanding people pay a specialized amount based on what they have, and then one day a villager refused to give them their goods based on their belief, whatever it may be. They refused to give what they had because they worked for it. I work for this. You can't have mine. Rightfully so. In the midst of the refusal, they drag him out of his home in front of everybody, throws that person in jail, and then they take everything they can from that person to see what money or what they, if it was back then, at the time they didn't have money, they'll be taking whatever they had to see what they can do with it to keep it for themselves. And same thing today with the money that we have. It's just a different form. So then later it turns into we all got to do it, or if I got to do it, they should have to do it too. Think about those villagers saying this. Here's our grain for the month. Please manage it for us. Or not even please, manage it for us, because that's your job. Here's our grain for the month. Versus them saying, here's your grain. We have worked so hard to grow. Can you please decide how we receive it? Even though that we grew all of this crop and we harvested everything, it's yours, sir. Can you please give it back to us in some way so we can manage this and not eat it all? Even if you go and you say, please, sir, give us the grain that we harvested and all this, you ain't getting nothing. They ain't giving you nothing. Even if you think you getting something, you ain't getting nothing compared to what you giving. It's really not even like, and it's really not even like wealthier people give more than people with less. I mean, nominally, they do. But proportionally, yes, someone who has less is giving more. But that's because you got to think about it like this. Generally, losing the $100 you're going to spend on groceries, of course, hurts harder than the $1,000 that you weren't going to spend at all. This is the whole reason that we have that fair taxation conversation that we, have these debates about. But what does fair even mean? Same dollar amount, same sacrifice, same reduction in the quality of life, same benefit received. I mean, we can't turn back now. So what are we going to do? Just imagine with everything we do have, everything we got right now, what the quality of life could be if we could just pay for most things without it having to feel like a sacrifice. You wonder why service or quality isn't how it used to be no matter where you go. Because when I grew up, ain't gonna lie, it was different. I mean, you got better service most of the time than you do, and that might just be me. But you wonder about that. But you also have to wonder why. Because people get a check, and when they get paid, they can't pay for anything. It doesn't make them want to go to work. And when they know they can't work themselves out of a situation that, they were told that they could work themselves out of, like we're told, we believe if we go to work and we make money, we'll eventually get out of this situation. But maybe I'm just speaking, you know what I'm saying, from experience and situations of people I know and myself, but it just don't work like that these days. Just what it seemed like, at least. I mean, but look though, maybe we have misunderstood taxation because we have confused currency with contribution. Money isn't necessarily the principle. It's just our modern unit that we have chosen to measure the obligation with. Our ancestors surrendered, like I said, grain, livestock, and sometimes, wealth. And we now use money. So nothing changed but the form of it. How much of what belongs to an individual can the collective legitimately claim? That's the good question. How do you answer that any other way but what I decide to give? You ain't taking nothing that I ain't giving, right? But you don't get to decide, right? But if you did get to decide and everyone underfunded what we needed, then what? See, that's what bring another question on. What if someone decided they're not going to give anything at all, but they still want to receive the benefits? Of course, we won't allow that. We're not going to allow that. So the idea was, if you participate in what we maintain together, you participate in maintaining it. It's not that we are entitled to your stuff, because if you don't participate, then just don't expect anything from us. That's fair. I think that's fair. So when did we start to allow people we appointed to be stewards over our contributions to stop treating us like the owners? As you know, it's way beyond that now. Because at this point, taxation is basically just payment to allow you to live and have the thought of owning things. After all, if you don't pay your taxes, they are just going to take the things that you said you own. I think before we think about taxes, we have to think about taxation as a whole, because a tax is just one instrument of taxation. If we talk about taxation, we should start with the much older human phenomenon lying underneath it, which is a transfer of something valuable from a household or person to a larger collective because of an imposed or recognized obligation. You don't even have to think about money when you think about it that way, right? So where do we draw the line? You can move out of this country for good, and you might still have to file taxes, most likely, if you didn't know that. What exactly are we paying for? It's not the simple village explanation anymore. The everybody uses it, so everybody pays excuse, it can't cut it anymore. It's almost like a dang on membership. And if you lose your membership, they can't kick you out the gym. They gotta completely remove you from society, which means that you gotta go to jail. And if you don't try to renew your membership, because they do offer filing options on taxes for all individuals, so they can't really see why you just can't file your taxes and pay them, bro. We offer, you know what I'm saying? I hope we do realize that the founding of our nation is based on people not feeling that it was fair that they had to pay taxes to people who they felt didn't have their best interests. Look up the Stamp Act. It will explain how that was basically deemed a tax on everyday life without their consent. Plus, they had no voice in legislation, and they didn't like it. So you know what happened after that? Does that sound familiar? Are we repeating history? Is that all we do? Let's keep on going. The U.S. government has always had taxing power, which made sense for general welfare and all that good stuff. The income tax came into play later during the Civil War, but it only lasted about 11 years and then it was repealed. And in 1913, Congress enacted the federal income tax law, or they put it into enactment, whatever they want. But a smaller number of people had to pay it than today because exemptions were pretty generous at that time. You know, a single person making under $3,000 wouldn't have to pay, which would equal around $97,000 today, give or take. A married couple making around $4,000 for bands would be around $125,000 a day. People making $500,000 and over, that was rich back then, but that loaded now because that'll be around $16 million today. Now, those people, they would have to pay, no exemptions. But you know, you got a little city. But of course, that would change over time to affect everyone, right? By taxing your earnings, of course. And then when you spend those taxed earnings, that gets taxed also. The business you spent it at owes taxes, and so on. Before money, our ancestors could contribute grain, livestock, labor, tribute, tithes, offerings, and other valuables. Like I said, modern society didn't eliminate the ancient idea of obligation. It just monetized it, categorized it, and administrated it. Instead of one contribution to the village, we now have multiple different governments making different claims at different stages of economic life. At what point does paying your share become a privilege of participating in just everyday life? Currency is just one way taxation can be paid. Throughout the history, people have paid through money, goods, property, and even their own labor and time, like I've said multiple times already. So whether you want change or you simply want a better understanding of the system, I think the most important thing to recognize is what happened to the contribution itself. What may have begun as a contribution eventually became an obligation. And once that obligation was written into law, whether you personally agreed to contribute isn't necessarily the deciding factor anymore. Whether you think that's good or bad is completely up to you. I'm not here to make that decision for you, but I will leave you with this. Whenever you're told that you have a choice, don't just look at the choices that you're being given. Look at what happens when you say no. Then ask yourself again, how much of a choice do I actually have? There is an authority over you that makes a decision based on your decision. Better yet, first think about why you made your decision. Then think about if you even had one to begin with. I'll catch y'all on the flip side.